Okay. Well, she left quick.
Your camera's on.
What?
All right.
Okay, I hope everyone is doing great. We are going to have a little bit of a shorter chabura tonight because I have to go to a meeting. So we will probably not even finish this chapter. This is a longie, but we'll do our best. The last time we met and we spoke, we've been talking about the inyan of a Baal Tshuva, but not so much a Baal Tshuva in the sense of someone going from being not religious or not connected. Well, no, actually, not religious. We're not talking about that. But we're talking about people who live unconnected and what they do when they have to be connected and what those differences are and ultimately what that looks like. And one of the things we left off with last time is a Baal Tshuva cannot take on becoming a connected yid without following Halacha. And one of the harder things to learn for some, is just straight Halacha. Gemara has a certain fire behind it, has a certain intellectual stimulation behind it, but Halacha is the cold hard facts, and for some it is challenging. But for others, they've mastered it. We've got a guy in Chicago who just got smicha, and he's could be a dayan, and he spent years and years studying halacha. So ultimately, we know that if we don't learn halacha, that we won't know what we're doing right or doing wrong. So he's going to talk a little bit about that and what that part of it is as it relates to becoming the Baal Tshuva that we so badly want to be. Okay. A person learns a halacha, so he thinks to himself, do I behave in this manner or not? If I already do this, great. But if I do not act this way, I will change my behavior as of this moment. My brother once told me that he was studying the laws of Shabbos with a study partner. One of the laws of Shabbos is that it is preferable that the head of the household, when he sits down for the Shabbos meal, should be able to see the Shabbos candles from where he is sitting. It often happens that the Shabbos candles are behind the head of the table. In homes with young children, it is common practice to put the Shabbos candles up on a shelf against the wall to avoid the dangers of fire around small children. So we choose whichever corner works, and that's where we set up the candles. If the table is set up a certain way, it could be that the candles are set up behind the back of the head of the household, preventing him from seeing them while he eats the Shabbos meal. When my brother's converts to learn that the head of the household should preferably see the candles during the meal, he stopped for a minute and thought, what's going on in my home? Next week, I'll sit on the other side of the table. This is the proper way to learn halacha. He sees what it says. With Hashem's help, he understands what he has learned. He thinks to himself, do I do this or not? If I do this, Baruch Hashem, great. If not, the past is nothing, the future is not yet, and the present is like the blink of an eye. Right now, at this very moment, I will begin. But all this is rooted in a deep emunah, that the creator of the world is the one who commanded me regarding this Torah and the fulfillment of all these detailed laws. This detailed law has infinite wisdom. The infinite one, blessed is he, wants me to do this. If the infinite one desires this, certainly according to his infinite wisdom, that is what must be done. Therefore, I must act the way even if I do not understand. So, one of the, you want to say something, Morty?
Is there any is there anything to actually understanding halacha? Well, obviously the halachas that we can understand, because there's chokim, but the halachas, is there anything to understanding halachos that further our, emunah in God? Because it's not so much so doing it because I understand it as opposed to doing it because God commanded me to it, but just kind of giving it more of a purpose as well by understanding some of these halachos.
Well, we know many halachas why they exist.
Right. But the thing is, is there it seems like it would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with that, but I think that, again, we're always talking with Bilvavi, he's always talking about the highest level, One of the things Reb Weinberger's had to say with some of his speeches and some of his Torah to the general Hamaynam is to understand this is coming from an extremely big Talmud Chacham and Tzaddik from Yerushalayim, who's a real Yerushalmi, who, it's very black and white. Not to say that anything he's saying we shouldn't have to do. We do have to work towards that, but they're very high levels. So at the highest level, person's consciousness is completely on Hashem and completely dedicated to whatever Hashem wants. He learns the halachas, and his connection to the actual meaning is simply his connection to understanding that he lives a lishma life. Like there's nothing else but Hashem. So like there's this lishmadik that exists in his life that is such a high level. I would say, again, I'm nobody to posket anything. I'm just, my opinion is that there is a ton of beauty behind understanding the halachas and how we can understand the paninius of the halachas, the inner working of a halacha, why we have a halacha, but there's ones that we just don't know. But yeah, I mean, definitely. Again, it says the first thing it says in Shulchan Aruch or the Mishnah Berurah, I don't remember. No, Shulchan Aruch. Shavisi Hashem the Negdi Samid. That we have all these so that we can be, have Hashem in front of us always. So like, this is something where, it's all for that deep connection. For many people, I think, like guys like me, where they need to understand the inner workings of things to connect to them, it's how you do the mitzvahs. It's how you do the halachas and how you execute the halachas. But I think that it doesn't take away from the fact that if I was at a higher level, okay, then I wouldn't feel the need, or I'd be able to overcome the feeling of the need that I need to feel something when I do the mitzvahs, versus them being completely for Hashem. Now, Hashem wants us to have nachas ruach, and that may never happen, and that's okay, But there are things that, I think, again, there's things that he'll talk about in Bilvavi that are the highest level. Based on everything we've said, learning halacha and putting it into actual practice is the root of everything. So yeah, I wanted to highlight this point. We can learn all the panimius HaTorah in the world. We can do all the different types of growth that we want to make, and we want to, chip away and continue to become quote-unquote Baalei Tshuva. But it has to be through the lens of also obtaining more halacha. Meaning, like in my growth, one of the things I've become just more cognizant of is making sure that I'm asking the necessary shilas to a rabbi on things that I may have just blown off as been like, whatever, it's fine. Like this is probably how you do it. And just assuming that if that's how, that's how I do it, versus asking, what's a question I recently asked? Yeah, about drinking water during davening. I asked if, this was okay. Because I was saying to myself, I'm just pounding water during davening. I'll grab a coffee. I don't know what the halacha says, So like, I asked that. I would never have asked that a little while ago, right? So, we start asking these different halachas so that we can connect to them. But also, it's not a panemius way to live when you're just going like la-di-da. You can't really, what are you connecting to? You're connecting to some self-image or something. Moshe Hillel Hirsch was here, and he was asked about panemius and whatever. The question was not really well given, but nonetheless, he was asked the question. So he said, one of his examples of certain behaviors are, there's a woman who asked the rabbi, said that she wants to wear a talis. So the rabbi gave her a talis, and he didn't put the strings on. She came back a couple days later, and she's like, wow, I'm so connected to Hashem because of my talis. That's ridiculous. Like, it's just made up. You can't be doing that. So like, ultimately, the highest way to connect is to follow the rules and the regs. Now, they're not really rules and regs. They're really guidelines, and they're also really for us, for our benefit. We know that when we follow mitzvahs and we have order in our lives, there's so much more pleasure to be gained from that. But anyways, it is possible that every one of us has sometimes forgotten a halacha and stumbled. There's no sign of there is no one who remembers everything and who does everything perfectly throughout his entire lifetime. Every person sometimes doesn't follow halacha because he forgets. But we cannot say that I don't understand why it's necessary or that it seems unimportant and therefore I don't fulfill the mitzvah chas v'shalom. In a deeper sense, a person who makes these claims is not returned to the Creator. He has returned to someone else. Perhaps he's returned to himself. If we understand that there's a Creator and we believe in Him, then we believe that we must fulfill His commandments. The most panemiistic thing we can do is to really know halacha in the best way possible. It's just really a grind to learn it, for some, me included. But, to be able to really knock out Mishnah Berurah in a way that's, deep, and you get through it, there's so much out there now to obtain halacha. I'm doing a halacha sefer now called Penina Hilcha Shabbos. It's from an Israeli rabbi. I'm doing it on Fridays, and I'm doing it with a kollel, Tzioni kollel here in Chicago, Kollel Torah Mitzion, And we're doing it with a soldier from Israel who's here for the next 3 years. Anyways, long story how we got set up, but it's a halacha sefer. But before he even gets into the halacha, here it is. Before he even gets into the halacha, it's from Rav Eliezer Melamed. So before he even gets in, it just looks like it's Sioni sefer. But before he gets into the sefer, all he's talking about in the beginning of the sefer, I'm going to tell you where I'm up to. Hold on. So Kol Adam Nasa Aved La'avaydaisav et Havaisav Ratsa Kadosh Baruch Hu Laman Yisrael B'midbar Lihischayes Karoi LeParnasa Sheyedu Shetachas Adam L'Davuk Ba Hashem U'V'Tayrasai V'Hamazoin V'Haparnasa Hu Rak Kli Lakach. Basically what he just said is that our food and our income is just a vessel in which we can be close to Hashem through connecting through His Torah. What's connecting through His Torah? It's following what the Torah says. So you'll say, if you just tell a guy who's not connected and not really feeling Yiddishkeit and not really holding that he should jump into Mishnah Berurah right away, any rabbi's going to tell you that that's probably not the angle in which to take, that the guy has to start feeling connected to his panemius, his inner self, his neshama, and then from there you can build it on. But eventually, through our growth and our migration, not knowing halacha is a non-negotiable barrier to true panemius. To being truly davuk. You have to be davuk through the lens of halacha. Thoughts and feelings. Okay, hold on. In a deeper sense, a person who makes these claims does not return to the Creator, return to someone else, perhaps return to himself. Okay, we read that. Okay. Thoughts and feelings. The Torah teaches us how to think. There are 2 more levels. As we mentioned, a person is divided in general into 3 parts: actions, feelings, and thoughts. Often a person's feelings seem very positive to him, even as his outward actions tell a different story. How many secular Jews say, "In my heart, I serve the Creator. I'm a good Jew. He helps everyone. He helps everybody, even thieves. In his heart, a person thinks that if he has good feelings, everything is fine." Love it. Chazal said, anyone who is compassionate to those who are cruel will end up being cruel to those who are compassionate. Beautiful. But what can I do if I feel in my heart that it's good to be kind to those who are cruel as well? Is that a good feeling or not? According to my logic, it's good to have mercy on a cruel person? Sure, such a person is the most miserable person around. He is cruel. He is terribly unfortunate. But Chazal teaches that a person should not always go where his natural instincts may lead him. That's also another big nakuda. It's a big nakuda. The emotions need another source of direction. How do I know which feelings are positive, which are negative? According to how it seems to me, not at all. If there is no brain, then the heart is not a true heart either. The emotions, too, are not the proper emotions. In order to know whether our feelings are correct, we need to learn. And if we learn, we will know what the feeling should be. In that case, let us begin with the learning. All of the flack that the world of Panemius Satira gets comes from the judgment, whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but it's coming from the judgment of feely, bubbly, emotional Yiddishkeit without the underlying baseline of tell me the halacha. Don't tell me how you feel, tell me the halacha. So what could be the remedy to that? How could we remedy the idea that there are Yidden who need to have a close feeling and connection, but they also are growing in their halacha l'maisa, in their halacha knowledge? And I think there's one simple thing that we can do. And I started doing this before I learned Gemara. It's actually a whole joke now with the group that I learn with in the mornings. But before we sit down and learn, the way of the Hasidim always was, just like the way of davening. If you look at a Masak Midvash Siddur, or you look at many of the Ari Siddurim, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of tefillas about kavana and tahara and devekus and connection before the davening even starts. And we know, Hasidim used to get to davening an hour and a half before davening, and wouldn't be done with their davening an hour and a half after davening. It was an entire morning of an affair. And they did that because just going into davening straight up We know we're not giving it our all because our mind isn't calm. Even if we wake up in a good mood, we're still going into davening. Some davenings will be good, some davenings will be bad. But there's a risk. The risk is it may be bad. The risk is I won't be focused. The risk is I won't be settled. But if we're in a situation where we give ourselves the time to get centered and to connect with ourselves and with our Creator and then go into davening, obviously that would be better. It's a lot to ask. It's hard for us, no doubt, but that's still true. Same thing with Gemara or Halacha or any of these other inyanim. We can't negotiate on the fact of what we need to be doing, but how we show up to do it, that can be different than the Hamaynah. So if you show up to Gemara, if you show up to Halacha, and you know that you need to know these things and learn these things in order to be an Erlich, well-rounded Yid, and you need to connect deeply to this Torah, then the way you show up can change the lens in which you do it. If you just show up and open a Mishnah Berurah and say, okay, I'm going to go through the different halachas of Shabbos, and it's telling you what you can scrape off the ground and put it into a pan and throw out the pan, or whatever the bayrer or whatever the halachas are, it's going to become a very, very dry exercise. And for some, they love that. They love conquering halacha. For them, it's awesome. But what if we can show up to halacha and say, Hashem, before I sit down with you, before I sit learn with you, again, if you're a spited as Yid, you're used to talking to Hashem. So you say, Hashem, I'm about to sit down with you. I'm about to learn halacha. I want to learn halacha because it's allowed me to get close to you. That's all I want. I want to feel close to you. I want to be connected to you. I know that I can't feel close to you if I'm not playing by the rules of the game. If I play by the rules of the game, I can feel like I'm building a kesher with you. If I don't, then I'm starting from a false start line. And I need to be able to get better at this so that I can deeply connect with my Creator in a way that He feels is appropriate and ultimately benefits me. And so let me do this well. Let me connect with you. And so we need that. Maybe we need that preamble before we jump in. The average person living in our world, whose place is not in the base medrash, who is not part of the Torah world, barely uses his mind. Whew. The majority of people obviously think about what to do, what not to do, when to get up, when to buy things, what to buy, but the brain is barely put to use. A small percentage of people study in various institutions of learning and their brains are also at work. But how long do they stay in learning? 2 or 3 years, maybe even 4 or 5? During the course of their lifetime, are they constantly learning? It is very rare to find in the outside world people whose brains are working at learning during their entire lifetimes. In the best case scenario, they may be learning for several years. On the other hand, a person who sits in the base medrash, his brain must continue to toil until his dying day. There is never a time when he is exempt from studying Torah, whether he is young or old, whether he is healthy or ill. As the Rambam says, he must learn Torah until the day he dies. In order to understand this, we first need to understand the power of Torah learning. So long as a person is on the outside of the Torah world, he has no inkling that to become part of that world involves building a world of the intellect. He thinks that to become a Baal Tshuva means to do whatever must be done. Whatever the Rav tells him to do, he'll do. It would be wonderful if everyone did that, but that's only a small part of becoming a Baal Tshuva. You cannot remain bound to the Rav like a child tied to his mother's apron strings, obeying everything he says. In the beginning, he will tell you what to do, but little by little, you must build and begin to think yourself. When you enter the world of Torah, it's not only a change in what to do and what not to do, as we mentioned. An additional basic change that must be is to understand that Yisrael were his first thoughts to be created. Chazal said, who did Hashem, so to speak, think to create first? The Jewish nation. In other words, the power of the Jewish nation is that they are the first of the thought. They are the true power of thought that exists in creation. That is the secret of the Holy Torah. That is the wisdom of the Creator given specifically to the Jewish nation. The Torah is made up of 3 parts. One part is Torah and the commandments that a Jew must fulfill. That is the aspect of fulfilling Torah in action. The second part is Torah to study it. The Torah is wisdom. It's a body of knowledge. The third part of the Torah is to build emotions based on true thought patterns. So he's creating a lane. The lane in which he's creating is, and he'll obviously go where he usually goes, which is, having devekos, is in order for us to set up our homes and to set up our lives and to set up the Mishkan, Evneh, in our souls, we need to do it through the lens of Torah, Halacha, and Mitzvos. And only when we do it that way, and again, we could say, here's the classic extreme thing, but okay, you want me to learn all of Halacha? Well, yeah, over time, we're not going to get good, but there are Rabbanim we have. And we should get in the habit of having a alarm clock that says, wait a second, I really don't know what I'm supposed to do here. So either look it up, call a Rav, call a Koil guy, call your Chavusa, whatever it is, and ask him. You should get in the habit of doing that so that we know that we're chipping away at not breaking the amount of halachas that we may break unconsciously simply because we don't know. Because when we get up to Shemayim, the conversation isn't going to be, I get it, you didn't know. It's going to be, you could have known, you chose not to work on it. So we've got to make that decision now to say, okay, I'm 40 years old. Morty's 30. Morty, how old are you? Morty's however old he is. But we're 40 years old, and it's time at some point to simply get into the habit of knowing certain halachas. And that could mean learning halacha, number one, or that could mean ultimately speaking to a Rav and figuring out what the pathway in which we need to do to be able to acquire our halachas as we continue to get older and have kids, and our kids, and even if our kids ask us, for them to get in the habit of asking, and for them to get in the habit of knowing these things and being able to connect to these things in a deeper way. So this is the way of the Baal Tshuva to start. This is the way of a Panemius Dikayid to really live with true Panemius, not any sort of Panemius that may ultimately be emotional based without concrete halacha based. So I got to stop here, boys, for tonight. I appreciate it. We'll stop on page 59. I love you both, and we'll talk next time. Everyone on Zoom or everyone on Spotify, iTunes. Thank you.